The Exile thar, an ancient and highly advanced alien species, were known throughout the galaxy for their domination of countless planets. They believed themselves to be unmatched in both intellect and power, conquering worlds with ease, often crushing resistance before it even began. With their advanced technology, they considered lesser species as no more than inconveniences, obstacles to their ever-growing empire. When they set their eyes on Earth, the Exile thar saw only another primitive planet ripe for the taking. The humans, with their meager technology and small stature, were not deemed worthy of true caution. The Exile thar prepared for what they believed would be a swift victory, an effortless colonization, and the acquisition of a resource-rich planet without much fuss. Primitive, short-lived, predictable, their reports said, summarizing the human race in a few words that radiated superiority. The Exile thar had never once encountered resistance that could challenge their overwhelming technological dominance. Earth was no different, or so they thought. Their first landing on Earth was grandiose, a show of force meant to intimidate and awe. Massive alien ships descended through the clouds, casting shadows over cities, forests, and oceans. The Exile thar didn't announce their presence quietly. They demanded attention, as they had done with countless other species before. The human response, however, was not what they expected. There was no panic, no immediate surrender. Instead, there was caution, followed by a meeting calculated and cool-headed. A group of human representatives, military officials, scientists, and leaders stood to meet the alien envoys. The Exile thar, towering and imposing, stood confidently before them, their alien weapons gleaming, their advanced suits a testament to their technological prowess. The leader of the Exile thar contingent, Commander Jorkel, wasted no time in making their intentions clear. You will submit to the Exile thar Empire. Resist, and you will face extinction, Jorkel said, his voice devoid of emotion, as if speaking a universal truth that the humans would soon accept. There was a moment of silence as the human leaders exchanged glances. The human commander, a seasoned military veteran with a weathered face and sharp eyes, took a step forward. His demeanor wasn't that of someone cowed by fear, but of someone who knew the weight of the moment. His words were firm but calm, cutting through the tension. You don't want to do this, Jorkel's eyes narrowed, barely perceptibly. This was not the response he had expected. On every other planet, this would be the moment where fear set in, where the weaklings would start groveling, offering their world's resources to avoid conflict. But the human's tone carried no such fear. Instead, it held a subtle, almost imperceptible challenge. The Exile thar commander dismissed it as bravado, as an insignificant spark of defiance that would soon be extinguished. Your insolence will be your downfall, Jorkel replied, his voice cold. With a wave of his hand, the alien soldiers activated their weapons, small, controlled demonstrations meant to display their power. Energy weapons hummed to life, hovering vehicles lifted off the ground, and a small alien drone zipped around, its presence meant to intimidate. The human response was swift. A warning was issued over the communication lines, alerting defense forces across the area. But even as the Exile thar braced for a panicked reaction, something else entirely unfolded. The humans didn't scatter. They didn't retreat. Instead, they acted with a precise, calculated resolve. Within moments, the alien drones were jammed, their signals scrambled by human tech teams who had been anticipating such an escalation. Soldiers on the ground, though visibly outmatched in terms of weaponry, didn't hesitate. They moved with an efficiency that suggested they were prepared for this. The humans weren't just reacting, they were anticipating. Jorkel's confidence faltered, if only slightly, as he watched the human forces spring into action with a level of coordination he hadn't expected. A skirmish erupted, one the aliens believed would end quickly in their favor. Yet, the humans fought back with tactics that defied the Exile thar's expectations. They didn't rely on brute force, but on strategy, hitting the aliens in ways they weren't prepared for. The humans managed to hold their ground, using their environment and guerrilla tactics to their advantage. The aliens, while technologically superior, struggled to deal with this unexpected resistance. Jorkel watched as his troops, though well-trained, found themselves outmaneuvered by these primitive beings. As the skirmish came to an uneasy halt, Zor-Kel realized the gravity of the situation. The humans had resisted, and worse, they had succeeded in doing so. This was no ordinary species. They were not cowering before the might of the Exile thar as expected. Instead, they stood tall, defiant, their eyes burning with a fierce determination. For the first time in his long military career, Zor-Kel felt a flicker of doubt. After the initial encounter, the humans wasted no time in gathering intelligence. While the Exile thar reveled in their supposed superiority, the humans were hard at work behind the scenes. Military analysts, engineers, and scientists came together in secret facilities across the globe to decode every piece of alien technology they could get their hands on. Drones, weapons, and even the alien ships themselves were carefully studied. Human ingenuity, combined with desperation, spurred breakthroughs in understanding the alien tech faster than anyone had expected. What they lacked in raw firepower, the humans made up for in adaptability. The aliens, for all their technological brilliance, were predictable. Their strategies were based on overwhelming power, not on the intricate, flexible tactics that humans were used to employing. Commander Zor-Kel might have been aware of this on some level, but his arrogance blinded him to the depth of the human resistance. Humans had always been quick to learn, and in this case they were not just learning, they were innovating. Cracking the Exile thar communications was their first major victory. The aliens had encrypted their signals, confident that no Earth species could ever understand their complex, multi-dimensional codes. Yet within days, a team of human cryptologists managed to break through their systems, deciphering enough to intercept and understand their plans. As the humans dug deeper into the alien technology, they discovered something unexpected. Despite their advanced ships and weaponry, the Exile thar had critical vulnerabilities. Their communications network, for instance, was centralized, relying on a few core nodes to relay information between ships and ground forces. It was a weakness that humans were ready to exploit. Meanwhile, the Exile thar commanders, including Zor-Kel, remained largely dismissive of the human efforts. The minor losses they'd experienced in the first skirmish were seen as anomalies, perhaps the result of momentary human luck. Zor-Kel sent a few elite squads down to Earth to clean up the resistance, convinced that a show of greater force would quickly bring the humans to heel. But the humans had already anticipated this move. The intercepted communications had given them insight into the Exile thar plans, allowing them to prepare for the next wave of attacks. This time, when the alien forces landed, they were met not with chaotic resistance, but with carefully planned traps and ambushes. Human military units had lured the aliens into isolated zones, where they could be picked off one by one. They used the landscape to their advantage, leading the technologically superior aliens into environments where their vehicles and drones struggled to maneuver. The Exile thar arrogance continued to blind them. Zor-Kel and his commanders were frustrated but not yet alarmed. They couldn't fathom that this small, seemingly primitive species could pose a real threat. They saw the human victories as insignificant in the grand scheme of their conquest. But the humans weren't just fighting a physical war. They had begun a campaign of psychological warfare, exploiting the Exile thar's weaknesses of arrogance and overconfidence. Human intelligence teams planted false information in the alien communications network, making it appear as though human forces were more vulnerable than they actually were. It was a dangerous gamble, but one that paid off. The Exile thar took the bait, committing forces to areas they believed would be easy to conquer, only to find themselves walking into deadly traps. Human sabotage extended beyond misinformation. They found ways to infiltrate the alien machinery, using their knowledge of alien technology to disrupt the Exile thar operations. In one significant victory, a team of human engineers managed to temporarily hack an alien drone ship, turning its own weapons against the Exile thar. It was a small victory, but it sent a shockwave through the alien ranks. For the first time, the Exile thar began to realize that they were not dealing with a typical primitive species. Zor-Kel's frustration grew with each passing day. Every time his forces attempted to crush the humans, they were met with unexpected resistance. What was supposed to be a simple conquest had turned into a prolonged campaign, with human forces proving far more resilient than any alien species the Exile thar had faced before. The commander began to suspect that his initial assessment of the humans had been wrong. They weren't simply defiant, they were dangerous. Back on Earth, human leaders took note of the shifts in the battle. They could see that the aliens were starting to crack under the pressure. This emboldened them to escalate their efforts. The psychological warfare intensified. Human forces began spreading propaganda, infiltrating the Exile thar communication channels with messages designed to demoralize the alien troops. The messages were simple but effective: you are not invincible. Earth will never fall. For the Exile thar soldiers, this was unthinkable. Never before had they encountered a species that fought back so fiercely or so cleverly. The humans had begun to turn the tide, not by matching the aliens in strength, but by using their wit and unpredictability. The final blow to the Exile thar's sense of superiority came during a crucial battle in a remote desert region. The humans had made it appear as though their defenses were weak, as though they were barely holding on. Zorkel ordered a full assault, expecting an easy victory. Instead, his forces were lured into a carefully laid trap. The humans had anticipated the attack, using the natural terrain to their advantage. Alien vehicles became bogged down in the sand, while human guerrilla fighters struck from hidden positions. Zorkel watched in horror as his forces were decimated by the very species he had dismissed as inferior. The battle was a complete rout. Human forces, though outgunned, had outmaneuvered and outthought the aliens at every turn. For the first time in his career, Zorkel was forced to admit that the Exile thar were not infallible. He had underestimated the humans, and now his forces were paying the price. But even as the battle ended, Zorkel couldn't bring himself to fully understand what had gone wrong. How could a species with such rudimentary technology cause this much damage to an empire as vast and powerful as the Exile thar? It wasn't until the final moments of the battle, as his ships pulled back from the planet's surface, that the truth began to dawn on him: the humans were not like any species the Exile thar had encountered before. They were not simply intelligent or resourceful, they were unpredictable, relentless, and willing to fight with everything they had to defend their home. Zorkel's mistake had been in thinking that humanity's greatest strength was their technology, when in reality it was their ability to adapt, to learn, and to never give up. And now that strength was proving to be the Exile thar's greatest challenge. The aftermath of the desert battle sent shockwaves through the Exile thar fleet. Commander Zorkel, once so confident in his superiority, now faced mounting losses and rising unease among his ranks. Reports of human resistance, innovation, and cunning continued to pour in from across the planet. What had started as a quick invasion was quickly turning into a nightmare for the alien empire. The Exile thar were not used to prolonged campaigns. Their usual method of overwhelming force had always been enough to subdue any species they encountered. But here, on this strange blue planet, they were encountering something entirely different: a species that refused to break. Desperation began to set in among the alien commanders. They had underestimated humanity, and now the cost of that mistake was becoming clear. The Exile thar High Command, monitoring the situation from their distant homeworld, began demanding answers. They ordered Zorkel to escalate the situation, to crush the humans before word of their failures spread across the galaxy. The Exile thar had a reputation to maintain, and losing to a primitive species would be a humiliation they couldn't afford. In response, Zorkel ordered the deployment of more advanced weaponry and called for reinforcements from their home systems. The Exile thar fleet above Earth grew larger by the day, their ships now bristling with enough firepower to lay waste to entire continents. The aliens were no longer toying with humanity, they were planning to annihilate them. No more subtle skirmishes or surgical strikes. This time, they would launch an all-out assault. But even as the Exile thar prepared their final, overwhelming attack, the humans remained defiant. Despite the seemingly insurmountable odds, Earth's military forces, scientists, and civilians banded together in a unified effort to resist the invaders. News of the human victories in the desert and other battlefields spread quickly, boosting morale across the planet. For the first time, humanity saw a glimmer of hope that they could win this war. They knew they were outmatched in terms of technology, but their ability to adapt, innovate, and fight with everything they had was beginning to shift the tide. In secret underground bunkers and high-tech research labs, human engineers and scientists worked around the clock to develop new ways to fight back. Using the knowledge they had gained from studying captured thar technology, they began to create hybrid weapons part human, part alien tech that could even the playing field. These new weapons weren't just stronger, they were designed to exploit the thar's weaknesses. One of the key breakthroughs came from an unlikely source. Human computer scientists managed to fully crack the thar communication systems. What had started as simple interceptions of alien messages turned into full-scale manipulation of their entire network. Human hackers began feeding false orders into the thar systems, causing confusion and chaos among their ranks. Alien forces would find themselves ordered to attack areas that were completely deserted, or to retreat when they had the upper hand. The thar, for all their technological superiority, were unable to understand how humans were able to penetrate their systems so easily. The human psychological warfare continued to intensify. Messages were broadcast directly into the alien communication channels, sowing fear and uncertainty among the alien soldiers. Some of the alien troops, who had never faced such resistance in their long history of conquest, began to lose faith in their commanders. The humans were proving to be more than just an irritation, they were becoming a real threat. While the thar had escalated the war with more advanced weaponry, the humans escalated with ingenuity and guerrilla tactics. They began using the alien technology against them in unexpected ways. Small, agile human fighter jets, outfitted with alien weapons, started targeting key points in the alien fleet. Ground forces used repurposed alien shields and armor to turn the tide in skirmishes. Humanity's ability to reverse engineer and adapt thar tech was now giving them the upper hand in several key areas of battle. Zorkel, watching these developments from his command ship in orbit, was beginning to lose his grip on the situation. His forces were supposed to be unbeatable, yet everywhere he turned, the humans were gaining ground. His soldiers were reporting increasing difficulty in carrying out basic operations, and the human counterattacks were becoming more organized, more devastating. In one particular engagement, humans launched a surprise counteroffensive against a heavily fortified alien base in the mountains. Using hacked alien drones and improvised EMP weapons, they managed to disable the base's defenses before storming it with a mix of human and hybrid weaponry. The battle was fierce, but in the end, the humans emerged victorious, capturing critical alien technology and driving the remaining thar forces back. The loss of the mountain base was a blow that Zorkel couldn't afford. His high command, now furious and questioning his leadership, began discussing replacements for him. For the first time in his career, Zorkel faced not just failure, but the possibility of outright disgrace. The once unshakable commander now found himself caught in a quagmire with no clear way out. But even in the face of growing losses, Zorkel was still determined to crush the humans. His pride wouldn't allow him to admit defeat. He ordered one final, massive assault on Earth, mobilizing the full might of the thar fleet. This would be a strike unlike anything humanity had seen, a concentrated attack designed to wipe out Earth's major cities and break human resistance once and for all. As the alien fleet descended, their ships blotting out the sky, the world held its breath. Human forces scrambled to defend against the incoming onslaught, knowing that this battle would likely determine the fate of their planet. But even as the thar prepared to unleash their destructive power, the humans had one last trick up their sleeve. In the days leading up to the final battle, human scientists had managed to develop a weapon based on the alien technology they had reverse-engineered. This new weapon, a powerful energy disruptor, was capable of short-circuiting the advanced systems of the thar ships. It was their last hope, and it had been built in secret in underground facilities around the world. As the Exile Thar ships began their assault, the disruptor was activated. Across the skies, alien ships began to falter, their systems glitching and failing. What should have been a devastating attack turned into chaos for the Exile Thar fleet. Ships collided, weapons systems powered down, and their carefully planned strike disintegrated into disarray. On the ground, human forces seized the opportunity. With their disruptor wreaking havoc on the alien fleet, human soldiers launched their own offensive, targeting the now vulnerable alien positions. The tide of the battle had shifted, and for the first time the Exile Thar were in full retreat. Zorkel, watching his fleet fall apart, realized that he had made a fatal mistake. He had underestimated humanity at every turn. What he had thought would be an easy victory had turned into a war he couldn't win. The humans, through sheer determination, innovation, and an unbreakable will to survive, had outsmarted and outlasted him. As his remaining ships fled Earth's orbit, Zorkel knew the truth: the Exile Thar had provoked the wrong species. As the remnants of the Exile Thar fleet retreated into the void of space, a heavy silence fell over Earth. The battle that had threatened to wipe out humanity had ended in a stunning reversal. The Exile Thar, an empire that had conquered countless worlds with ease, had been forced to retreat in disgrace. Their ships, once symbols of unstoppable power, were now limping away from Earth, battered and broken. For the first time in their long history of conquest, they had encountered a species they could not subdue. In the command ship, Zorkel stood alone, staring at the ruined battlefield below. His pride, once unshakable, had been shattered. The final assault had been meant to end the humans once and for all, to erase their defiance from existence. But instead, it had been his forces that were obliterated, their carefully planned attack undone by the very species he had considered weak and primitive. The humans had fought with a ferocity, a resourcefulness that defied every expectation the Exile Thar had of them. As Zorkel stared at the planet, his mind raced with questions. How could this have happened? How had a species so far behind technologically managed to resist his forces? The Exile Thar's technology was centuries ahead of anything humans had, yet somehow it hadn't been enough. The humans had used guerrilla tactics, psychological warfare, and their ability to innovate under pressure to turn the tide. And then there was that final blow, the energy disruptor that had short-circuited his fleet. He had never seen anything like it. Somehow, the humans had taken Thar technology and turned it against them. The retreat order had been given, and now Zorkel's commanders and troops were licking their wounds, stunned by the defeat. For the first time in his long career, Zorkel felt the cold sting of regret. He had underestimated them from the beginning, assuming that their primitive technology and short lifespans made them inferior. In his arrogance, he had believed that crushing them would be simple. But humans had proven themselves to be anything but simple. Back on Earth, the mood was very different. The humans were celebrating, though their victory had come at a high cost. Cities had been destroyed, lives lost, and the planet itself had suffered greatly from the invasion. But humanity had survived, and more importantly, they had won. The alien ships were gone, their threat neutralized, and for the first time, Earth felt a sense of triumph. In military bunkers and command centers across the globe, human leaders reflected on what had been accomplished. They had fought off an alien invasion, not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through resilience and adaptability. They had shown the universe that humanity would not go quietly, no matter the odds. The human spirit, with its ability to endure and fight back, had been the Exile Thar's undoing. But the leaders also knew that this was only the beginning. The Exile Thar Empire was vast, and while Earth had won this battle, they knew that the aliens could return one day. If that happened, humanity would need to be ready. The victory had shown them that they were capable of more than they had ever imagined, but it had also revealed the immense threats that existed beyond their world. The humans were no longer just thinking about Earth, they were thinking about the stars. In the coming weeks, humanity would begin rebuilding. Scientists would continue studying the alien technology, learning from it, and preparing for any future conflicts. They had already begun creating new weapons, defenses, and systems based on the knowledge they had gained. Earth's militaries, once divided by borders and politics, had unified in a way that had never been seen before. The threat of extinction had brought them together, and now they would remain united to defend their planet against any future threats. Meanwhile, aboard his flagship, Jor-Kel held a private conference with his high command. The mood was tense, the atmosphere heavy with shame and disbelief. His fellow commanders demanded answers, but Jor-Kel had none to give. He could only repeat what they already knew: the humans had outwitted them, something that no species had ever done before. Their empire had been humiliated, and it was all because of one fatal mistake: they had underestimated their enemy. The Exile Thar's pride had blinded them, leading them to believe that their technological superiority would always guarantee victory. They hadn't accounted for the human spirit, their ability to innovate, to endure, and most importantly, to refuse to give up, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. The humans had adapted to every challenge the Exile Thar threw at them, turning their weaknesses into strengths. They had done what no other species had done before: they had made the Exile Thar retreat. As the ship drifted away from Earth, Jor-Kel was left with his thoughts. He had spent his entire career conquering worlds, bringing species to their knees with ease. But now he had been bested by a species he had barely considered a threat. The humans, for all their perceived flaws, had proven themselves to be more dangerous than any enemy he had ever faced. They weren't just fighters, they were survivors. Jor-Kel knew that word of this defeat would spread throughout the galaxy. Other species, long subjugated by the Exile Thar, would hear about what had happened on Earth. The Exile Thar Empire's reputation, once so unshakable, would be questioned, and while the humans had won this battle, they had also drawn the attention of others. The galaxy was full of powerful empires, and now Earth had made itself known. Yet, as the Exile Thar fleet disappeared into the stars, Jor-Kel couldn't help but feel a sense of respect for the humans. They were unlike any species he had ever encountered. They had defied the odds, stood their ground, and forced the Exile Thar to retreat. In that moment, he knew that the humans were not just another primitive species, they were something else entirely. On Earth, as humanity celebrated its hard-fought victory, one message became clear: they would never be underestimated again. The Shal Thar had provoked the wrong species, and now they knew what every future enemy would learn: humans were survivors, and they would never be conquered.